Venice. Not just a city, but a civilization that rose out of the silt and sand of the islands scattered along the northern Adriatic. They once called it La Serenissima, the most serene. And even today, more often than not, it still deserves the description. It's a city you can't quite believe is true, even when you set foot in it. It has an extraordinary dreamlike quality, without the intrusion of traffic with wheels or any modern development whatsoever in the center. The illusion of drifting backwards in time makes everything seem deliciously unreal. But Venice didn't just float into existence. It was built by adventurous and avaricious men, seafarers and hard-nosed traders, wily politicians, and skillful rulers. For centuries, a powerful marine republic, it gathered in its wealth not only from around the Adriatic, but from the farthest flung shores of the Aegean and Mediterranean as well. Yet, in a way, its story begins somewhere else. The island of Torcello, about 6 miles to the northeast, is where the first settlers of the archipelago arrived in the 7th century, fleeing from the barbarians who were destroying the Roman Empire. They built a fabulous city. But when Venice prospered, Torcello declined, and Venetian builders rowed across to pillage and dismantle the island's palaces and churches. Now it's deserted and rather sad, but very peaceful. A place to wander, give rein to your imagination, and sense the ghosts of what Ruskin called the Mother of Venice. Torcello had canals, though never on the scale of Venice. Venice has 28 miles of them. But the city itself is small, walkable from end to end in an hour, up and down little humped bridges, and through a warren of cobbled alleys, so well marked and mapped you couldn't get lost if you tried. It's spectacular by gondola, of course, but also spectacularly expensive. Most people go by vaporetti, the water buses that zip along the Grand Canal. Only 3 bridges span the Grand Canal. The most famous is the Rialto, which also gives its name to the surrounding district. Here the merchants of Venice congregated, just as Shakespeare wrote. The Rialto was a city's commercial hub, full of warehouses, banks, and at one time, brothels. 400 years ago, there were reckoned to be 11,000 prostitutes in the city. Michelangelo was on the short list to design the Rialto Bridge, but he lost out to Dal Ponte. To go anywhere fast, take a water taxi, but slow motion by gondola has to be part of the dream, whatever it costs. There's really nothing to compare with its seductive movement, slicing through the water, or the perspective it gives of Venice's fading and fragile grandeur. Although these waterside palaces aren't in such dire peril of deterioration as they used to be, the risk of decay is still a problem. But somehow, their very vulnerability seems to make them more appealing. Early in the morning, The best place to be is underneath the Rialto Bridge, where one of the most colorful food markets in Europe happens every day except Sundays. Here, Venetian housewives pick over the freshest fruit, vegetables, and fish, while visitors come to watch the fun from the sidelines among a forest of antique columns. With its glorious Eastern Basilica and soaring campanile, the Piazza San Marco, St. Mark's Square, is the city's stunning centerpiece. It's a space of fascinating proportions, not a square in fact, but an irregular shape, which is partly why it has such impact. Here in the heyday of the Republic, the ruler of Venice, the Doge, would review his troops and honor victorious commanders. At Carnival time, it's crammed to bursting point, but empty or packed with people, in sunshine or in twilight, or even underwater when the November tides rise and flood it, St. Mark's is extraordinary. Although the cost of tea for two on the piazza is as much as a meal elsewhere, the ringside view is cheap at the price. Along the waterfronts and on the north side of the piazza stretches the Palazzo Ducale, the Doge's palace. For 900 years, this was a seat of power and residence of the Doges, a treasure store of artwork, and a prison. Part Byzantine, part Gothic, and part Renaissance. Its blendings of styles symbolizes the influences that shaped Venice itself. Beside it, like a palace built for Scheherazade, is the glowing splendor of St. Mark's Church. This was built over 1,000 years ago to house the remains of St. Mark's body, which two Venetian merchant adventurers claimed to have stolen from Alexandria. The interior is as Eastern as the exterior promises, and contains countless riches looted from Constantinople, including some of the columns that support it. The sheer volume of St. Mark's treasures can be overwhelming. Most visitors find they have to come more than once to take in even half of what's of interest: the marble and the murals, the sculptures, paintings, and mosaics. An amazing variety of vessels bustle to and fro on the canals. Remember, everything as well as everyone has to come and go by water, including the garbage, laundry, papers, and the mail. But it's mainly the tourist industry that keeps the gondolas going. You can see them being made at the scueri, the gondola yards. Gondolas have been around a long time, since the 11th century. At the peak of their popularity, the fleet numbered 10,000. Now there are only a few hundred. They're still made entirely by hand, using 280 separate pieces of wood. Their sleek, distinctive shape also has to be kept in good repair. Today's gondola looks very different from those of previous centuries. 700 years ago, it had 12 oars and an iron beak. In the 16th century, it was a showier beast with gilded prows, upholstered cabins, and hulls decorated with carvings and flowers. Then, to stop things from becoming completely outrageous, a law was passed in 1562, decreeing that all gondolas should be black. The name gondola has fuzzy origins. Some say it comes from the Greek kondi, meaning a kind of shell. Others say that it's from the Roman symbola, meaning a small boat. Their manufacture today is all that's left of Venice's once great shipping industry. At one point in the 16th century, when Venice was at war with the Turks, the shipyards were producing a new warship every day. The gentle pace of traveling on water is one of the real delights of the city. What a tremendous difference the absence of normal traffic noise makes. The speed limit is about 5 miles, or 9 kilometers an hour, and there are very few collisions. Venice isn't known for its aggressive drivers, unlike almost every other city in Italy. In a working-class district near the docks is one of the oldest churches, San Niccolò dei Mendicoli, Saint Nicholas of the Beggars. Smaller parish churches like this are usually bypassed in the effort to see all the major sites, and they're often real gems. Though humble by other standards, San Niccolò has a wonderful antique atmosphere in its candlelit interior. Another church well worth seeing is San Moise. Like so many buildings here, it's a mix of styles, originally medieval and now Baroque. Flamboyant lions prance everywhere you look in Venice. They're the patron beast of the city. Why? No one knows. But the rich merchants in centuries gone by used to keep these big cats in their gardens. In fact, all kinds of heraldic creatures are carved and painted on anything that calls for decoration, like the racing gondolas that take part in the regattas, the only ones allowed to break the rule about funereal black. The Church of Santa Maria della Salute has for 300 years guarded the entrance to the Grand Canal on the opposite side from St. Mark's. A church of thanksgiving to the Virgin Mary at the end of a terrible plague in the 17th century during which about a third of the population in the lagoon died. It's known as Salute because Mary is the bringer of health. It's the most splendid Baroque church of all. Notices saying angels falling were to be seen a few years ago to warn visitors of its crumbling masonry. But thanks to the French, who funded its restoration, the angels can now look down without fear of losing their footing. In November, there's the Festa della Salute, when engineers construct a bridge of boats over the Grand Canal, and the city walks across the water and into the church to give thanks for good health. Almost any time is an excellent time to visit Venice, with the possible exception of the Easter holidays, when you get trampled on the vaporetti by hordes of schoolchildren. In the heat of the summer, when the smell of the canals can sometimes be so overpowering, it is possible to become oblivious to their charms, especially the small side canals, which is a pity, for they give you a much more intimate picture of the daily doings of the Venetians. Although much of the city may look like a stage set, people do live perfectly normal lives here against this gorgeous backdrop. Ca' Rezzonico, on the Grand Canal, was said by William Morris to be one of the world's great houses. It's certainly one of the most imposing of the city's palatial mansions, and fortunately, it's open to the public. The Museum of 18th Century Venice is an absolute treat. It's so beautifully laid out, you feel you aren't so much looking at the exhibits as walking into a house the owners have just left. It's easy to imagine the sumptuous lifestyle they must have led: the grand balls, the elegant dinners, the artistic and literary salons. One of the popes once lived in Ca' Rezzonico, and the poet Robert Browning died here. Losing touch with reality and time is what makes the Venice experience so special. But unreal becomes surreal when the Carnival takes over. Disguise yourself in a mask and costume, and you can get away with anything. Well, that used to be the idea behind the Venice Carnival. In the old days, it was a time when people really let their hair down, got wildly drunk, and behaved outrageously. And all this went on for almost 2 months. Now the fun is kept more or less within bounds and lasts for just the 10 days before Lent. But a great time is still had by all. Masks and costumes are worn day and night, and playful spirits are let loose. It's no time to hang on to your inhibitions. Masks are on sale in the shops all year round, and many are minor works of art, exquisitely decorated. The rich and chic sport theirs at a grand masked ball, while the crowds go dancing in the Piazza San Marco. In a city where things are not always what they seem, the Church of San Giovanni in Paolo appears a great deal less self-important than many others. And yet this was the setting for some of the grandest ceremonial occasions Venice has ever seen. The funerals of all the doges took place here, and 25 of them are actually buried in the church. Even the interior, although very beautiful, isn't as overwhelmingly opulent as some. It's ironic in a way that men, who in their lifetime were often devious and cruel in their pursuit of power and earthly riches, should be surrounded in their last resting place by an air of such sanctity and benign peace. From above, the distinctive cross shape of the churches stands out among the marvelous geometry of Venice rooftops. From whatever angle you look at the city, it's a work of genius, an artistic tour de force. It was, of course, a major center of art right from the beginning. Like Amsterdam, another seafaring city on the water, Venice used the wealth it gleaned through trade or plundering to further artistic endeavor. Sponsorship came not only from the nobility and the church, but from the prosperous merchants of the craftsmen's guilds. But materialism wasn't all. This was, to some extent, a caring society. During the many plague epidemics of the 16th century, the Brotherhood of San Rocco founded a hospice to help the sick, albeit in magnificent surroundings. Today, people come to see the ceilings at the School of San Rocco, a remarkable and priceless canopy of work by Titian, Tintoretto, and Tiepolo. If the feast of art and architecture leaves you with cultural indigestion, you can always break free and take a trip around the lagoon and its islands. Soon you're in another world, taken over by the sights and sounds of nature. You can go to the famous Lido, the strip of beach that has given its name to 1,000 cheap bars the world over. In the last century, it was an undeveloped spit of land where riders would come to gallop their horses. It was a favorite haunt of the poet Byron. But by 1900, it had become the smartest bathing resort in Italy. Today, it still has some of the most sybaritic hotels, a casino, and the Venice Film Festival. They say St. Francis was shipwrecked on this island, on a voyage back from the Holy Land. Whether he was or not, a Franciscan monastery was built here 700 years ago. Then, because of an outbreak of malaria, always a problem in the lagoon, it was left totally deserted. So it's known as San Francesco de Deserto, even though the monks eventually returned and the monastery is again thriving. There are over 100 islands in the estuary, many with something unusual or unique to explore. Some can be reached by water bus. Others, like this one, are included on special excursions. On the island of Burano, the women have kept alive one of Venice's great crafts, lace making. You see them quietly clicking their needles and bobbins as they sit between brightly colored houses and the tiny canals. There's even a lace-making school here. Murano has a different specialty. At one time, Venetians were the only people in Europe who knew how to make a mirror. For this, of course, is one of the oldest centers of glassmaking. Venetian glass was, and still is, highly prized, and many a chandelier that glitters in palaces, embassies, and opera houses throughout the Western world has come from this tiny speck of an island in the Adriatic. Back in Venice, nightfall works its own particular magic on moonlit palaces and piazzas. What's it to be? A Campari at Harry's bar? Or dinner for two on some glittering waterfront? Venice is one of those places that surpasses its own publicity. Somehow all the canvases by Canaletto and reels of celluloid can't sell it short. Being here is better than the dream. For a free catalog of over 250 travel and destination videos, or to order another Super Cities video, call toll-free 1-800-699-4486, extension 802.